Good morning, everybody. Today we are continuing 5-2 exponential function, and this is the second day. And in today's lesson, we will be learning how to find equations of both linear and exponential functions, something that's a straight line and not a straight line, right? So before we do that, let's do some reviews on how to find equations as well as finding outputs when you're given an input. So in this review sections, the first part is we're given a table and your job is to find the equation of this table in the slope-intercept form. Let's remind ourselves what is slope-intercept form. So in slope-intercept form, the equation is y equals mx plus b, which your m is your slope and the b is your y-intercept. So to do that, let's actually find out the slope by finding the patterns within the table. So I see that the patterns for the x, as you're going from left to right, each axis is added 1. So it's plus 1 every time you move to the right to generate a new number for the x value. Well, likewise, for the y value, as you're going from left to right, it looks like, to go from 4 to 7, 7 to 10, 10 to 3, it's add 3 every single time. So your slope will be the reciprocal of these two numbers. So you put the 3 on the top of the fraction, and you put the 1 at the bottom of the fraction. So your slope is going to be 3 over 1, which is 3. And you put this number 3 into the coefficient of x, so this is 3x. And if you were to find a y-intercept, one of the shortest way to do is to backtrack the table as a reminder. So you have to extend this table to the left until you see x being 0. So since you add 1 from left to right, then you're going to subtract 1 from right to left. So 1 minus 1 is going to be 0. And then likewise for the y value, since you go from left to right, you add 3, then from right to left, you subtract 3. So 4 minus 3 is 1. So that means this number right here is your y-intercept. So it's going to be positive once you put plus 1. That means your final equation of this table in slope-intercept form, right, if it's a straight line like linear, it's going to be 3x plus 1. Well, once you've found an equation, let's move on to the next section. Well, if I were to give you a couple equations, how would you find the output of these equations when I give you the input? So let's find out, here we have two equations. The first one is called f of x is equal to 5x plus 6. The second equation is g of x is equal to 2 times 5 to the power of x. Well, to find out what's f of 2, first of all, I have to choose the correct equation. Since I want a function that's named f, I am looking at this equation, which is 5x plus 6, and I'm going to replace the x with the value of 2. So you're going to write 5 and then times something plus 6, and inside a blank, you're going to write the number 2 because the input is 2. Then from here, you do the order of operations. Between multiplication and addition, you add last and you multiply first. So 5 times 2 is 10 plus 6, which could get you 16. That means that when the input is 2, your output is 16. Or when the x value is 2, your y value is 16. Likewise, to find out what's g of 3, I have to choose the correct equation that's named g, which is the second equation because it's g of x. So when the input is 3, you're going to rewrite this equation 2 times 5 to the something power. And instead of x, you're going to write third, okay? So using the order of operations between multiplication and exponents, we're supposed to perform the exponents first. So, here you do 5 times 5 times 5, which if you use a calculator, is 125. And 125 times 2 will become 250. That means when the input is 3 for the g of x, the output is 250. Or, in other words, when x is 3, your y is 250. Now that you learn how to find outputs when input is given, as well as finding the equation of a straight line, let's take a look at 5-2 exponential function day 2. As a reminder, for exponential function, it is in the form y equals a times b to the x, where a is your y-intercept and b is something called growth factor, which is the pattern in the table. Well, in this page, you see a lot of examples of example 1. Let's take a look at them. So in example 1, I see that part A, I see that there's a table 1, 6, 2, 18, and 3, 54. And your goal is to find the equation. First of all, we first need to ask, is there a pattern involving addition or multiplications for the y value only? Because I know for x, it's just add 1 every single time, isn't it? So it's just plus 1 and plus 1. But for the y, is not add anymore. This is multiplication. How do you go from 6 to 18 and 18 to 54? Right, so you're going to multiply by 3 as you move from left to right. So this is actually times 3. This is not add anymore. This is a multiplication. Since this is a multiplication, it's not a straight line anymore because the y is getting higher, faster, and faster. It's not going by the same amount, it's going by different amount, okay? It's getting faster and faster over time. So because of that, you're going to find the equation in exponential form, so which in this case could be y is equal to blank times blank to the x. Well, the first one, well, let's talk about the growth factor. This is your growth factor. Every time you see a multiplication, this is your growth factor. In this case, because it's 3, you're going to put 3 here, okay? And then for the y-intercept, just like how you find equations in slope-intercept form, you're going to backtrack. So since you have x equals 1 here, you're going to subtract 1, and you get x being 0. And since you go from left to right, you multiply by 3. To go the other way, you divide it by 3, right? So 6 divided by 3 is 2. That means this is your y-intercept. So it's going to be y equals 2 times 3 to the x, and that's your final answer. Likewise, let's take a look at part B. Well, part B, I see that there's a pattern for x, right? Again, it's keep adding 1, so I'm going to put that. So it's going to be plus 1, and plus 1. But for the f of x, which is aka the y value, this is not multiplying anymore. This is dividing. I see that it's divided by, how do you go from 500 to 100, from 100 to 20, from 20 to 4? That's right, you're going to divide it by 5 every single time. But we're not going to write division, because divided by 5, it's just same as multiplying the reciprocal, which is 1/5. So we do not write divided by 5, but we're going to say multiply by its reciprocal, which is 1/5. Okay, so that means our growth factor, it's going to be 1/5. That means when you write the equation, we're going to write f of x, not y, because it says f of x right there. And you're going to write the y-intercept first, which is 500 right here, because when x is 0, the y value is the y-intercept. So it's going to be 500 times, and then the growth factor, 1 over 5 to the x power. And then this is your final answer. Easy, isn't it? Well, in part C, very, very similar. Well, what happens if you don't have a table, if you have the order pairs? We kind of do the same thing. I mean, if you don't have a table, why don't we create a table? So let's actually create a table with the x and the y value. And then we're going to leave some space because the x value starts at 2. So we're going to leave some space to backtrack later. So 2, 32, 3, 128, and then 4, 512. Well, let's find some patterns. Now, this is actually not easy to find because these numbers are kind of large. So on your calculator, it doesn't matter what kind of calculator, you're going to find, 32 times what number is 128? Or in other words, what's 128 divided by 32? So if I were to use a calculator, 128 divided by 32, I'll get 4. Now, if you want to confirm that, you're going to have, try it again. 128, is it 128 times 4 equals 512? Let's actually check that. And the answer is yes. So the growth factor, it's times 4 in this case. So we're going to put from here to here is times 4. And from here to here is times 4. Well, that means the growth factor is times 4. So we're going to write y is equal to blank times blank to the x. So this is going to be a 4. The growth factor is 4. And then for the x value, you're going to backtrack. So we're going to put 1 and 0 here. We have to backtrack twice because it's here we started at 2. And we have to get to 0 by writing 2 extra numbers. So likewise, we're going to divide it by 4 on the other side. So it's 32 divided by 4, it's going to be 8. 8 divided by 4, it's going to be 2. So this is your y-intercept. So it's going to be 2 times 4 to the x for your exponential equation, right? Still easy, isn't it? Well, for the next part, part D, you notice that, well, it's pretty much back to the table, but this time, I don't see a multiplication patterns anymore. I see for the x is still at 1, right, that's nothing changes, but for the y, I see that, it's not dividing or multiplying. This is subtracting now. So 10 minus 4 is 6, and then 6 minus 4 is 2. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So this is not an exponential functions anymore. This is back to linear because we're decreasing. The y value is decreasing by the same amount. So therefore, it's not going to be in this form anymore. We're going back to the previous topic, previous math courses where you're going to write in the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, where your slope is your pattern, right? Your slope here, it's going to be, well, your x is at 1 every time, and then your y subtract 4 every time. So it's going to be negative 4 over 1, which is negative 4. So that means your slope is negative 4x, and then the y-intercept, you have to backtrack. So we're going to put a 0 here, and we're going to add 4 on the y value, which is 14. So that means your slope-intercept form is y equals negative 4x plus 14. And this is just like a review in case if you don't see a multiplication pattern, but you see an addition pattern, we're going back to slope-intercept form. So it is your job to recognize, is the table linear or non-linear? If it's linear, use slope-intercept. If it's non-linear, has a multiplication pattern, then you use exponential functions. Let's continue 2 more examples. So I see that in part E, example 1 part E, well, there's not a table and this is not an ordered pair. It's just a list of number. And we're going to do the same thing here. So let's assume that, well, since you have 5 numbers, we're going to say the x value or the first term, we're going to call the 0th term. This is the first, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth. So that way, we have a set of ordered pairs, kind of like 0, 6, 1, 12, 2, 24, so on and so forth. And when you have a list of number on Pearson, they would assume that the first number is a 0th number. Then the second number is the first number. I know it's kind of confusing, but this is how the Pearson homework is going to lay it out for you by calling the first number being the 0th term. Well, I see that there's a pattern for the y values from 6 to 12, from 12 to 24, from 24 to 48, so on and so forth. So I see that the pattern is multiplied by 2 from one y value to the other. So because there's a multiplication pattern, we're going to use the exponential form. Y is equal to a times b to the x. So in this case, it's going to be blank times blank to the x. Well, the growth factor is 2, so we're going to put 2 here. The y-intercept is the first number, which is 6. So it's going to be y is equal to 6 times 2 to the x power. And then that's it. Well, lastly, you have a graph here, and you're doing the same way. Well, however, this graph, well, obviously, this graph is an exponential function. This does not look like a straight line. So you know very well in the first place, it's going to be y is equal to a times b to the x. Well, you're like, well, what is the growth factor? What is the y-intercept? Well, I know that this is the y-intercept. Isn't this point crosses the y values? So that means the order pair here is going to be 0, 2. And then the order pair for here is going to be 1, 6. So I know that the y-intercept in the first place, it's going to be 2. So we're going to put 2 here. Well, let's take a look at the y value. How do you go from 2 to 6? I mean, now, of course, there's 2 answers. Either you could say plus 4 or times 3. But however, remember, this is not a straight line, so we don't use a plus pattern. We use a multiplication pattern. So therefore, I need to ask you, 2 times what number is 6? That's right, you're going to times 3, right? So that means your growth factor is 3. That means your final answer for this equation, for this graph, is y is equal to 2 times 3 to the x. Well, that's it for the lesson, and this is the hint on problem number 12 on your Pearson's homework. And this is one of the word problems that will have multiple parts in your homework 5-2, exponential functions, day 2. And I am giving you hints here. I'm going to show you how the problem number 12 look like on the screen. And then from there, for part A, since the table is given in a plus pattern, your equation is going to be in slope-intercept form. So for part A, your answer should look like this. Y equals mx plus b, and you have to find out what's the slope and the y-intercept. Well, likewise, for the dividing existing bulb, well, I see that the pattern is a multiplication pattern. So it's not going to be slope-intercept anymore. It's going to be exponential. So you're going to write your answer in this format, right? Blank times blank to the x by finding the y-intercept and equal factor. Well, once you found these two equations, for part B, you're going to find what's f of 10 and g of 10, just like how I taught you in the review sections. And then for part C, likewise, you're going to find f of 5, f of 15, g of 5, and g of 15. So you should have a total of 4 answers for part C. And then part D, finally, you compare the values of both tables. You want to see which one gets to the higher number faster and which one gets to the high number slower. And you're comparing is buying new bulbs or dividing existing bulbs going to get to the higher number faster after you completed A, B, and C. Okay, so these are your hints to you to help you on problem number 12. And now the next couple minutes will remind you how do you get to your Pearson's homework. Thank you.
Hey everyone, so to get to your homework, first you go to my CNUSD website and then you click on the top of the page, my CNUSD, to log in. Well, you're going to type in your username and your password. Well, in this case, your student ID and your password. Then you go on to resource. I think for you guys it's resource. And then you go to a place called Pearson Savas Easy. Pearson Savas Easy. I'm not quite sure how you say that word, but it's Pearson Easy. Click on that. And you get to this pop-up page. And you're going to click on your class textbook. So you click on this right here. This is called Envision Integrated Mathematics 1 2009 Common Core. You click on that, a new window pop up again, and you see 3 different colors. The green color is your online textbooks. I teach from this textbooks. So if you don't have a copy, an actual copy, you could always go to here and click on the appropriate sections that we're teaching. But to find your online homework, you look at the reddish, orangish box in between, in the middle. It's called classes. So you're gonna click on here, click on classes, and depending on which period you're in, there will be new assignments here. So you're going to click on the click into the assignments, and then do your homework, and then that's it. Well, inside the homework, there are problems for you to work on, which allow you 3 attempts before they give you the final answer. So for example, for this problem, if you accidentally got a wrong answer, it'll tell you keep trying. Then you type in another answer, and if it's wrong, then it'll give you one more chance. And the third time that you got it wrong, it'll tell you the answer right away. So, but you could always get help by viewing an example on this part of the feature. So it'll tell you what to do step by step, step by step, step by step until the final answer. So you could always refer to the question, help view an example, or you could use help me to solve this to actually work it step by step. So there will be more answer boxes for you to fill in, but at least it will help you on your learning. Now for this problem, what do you do when you get it wrong, right? So well, to get a point or to get scores on that homework, then you click on similar questions and you keep practicing until you get it right. So if I were to click on similar questions, you notice that the questions changed. It's different from the previous one. So let's say this time you got it right. Let's say x is equal to 5, right? Well, if you got it right, it will tell you well done, okay, and then you move on to the next problem. So you click on next to move on to the next problem, like this. And once you finish all the problem, I believe the next thing is for you to make sure that you answer all the questions. If there's anything that it's not answered, make sure that you go back and look at it like this, right? So this is not answered. But let's say assume that if you finish your all of the questions on your homework, then you go to the bottom, I believe. Oh, actually, this button right here says submit my work. So you click on it, and then boom, I only got 3% just because I only answered one question correct, the rest I did not answer. So in order for you to get at least 80% or any good scores, make sure that you answer every single question and it's correct, not incorrect, for you to get as many points as possible on your homework. If you have any questions, please contact me.